The energy inside Studio 6B was elegant, focused, almost reverent, the kind of atmosphere only Tom Hiddleston could create. It was a space designed for celebration, yet his presence instantly commanded a rare, respectful silence among the hundreds in the audience. His entrance wasn't a celebrity rush, but a controlled, graceful, almost balletic traverse of the stage. Every step, every angle of his body language, betraying a lifetime spent training for the moment he is observed. His signature calm brilliance was a carefully constructed shield, a visible, yet invisible defense mechanism built on decades of professional commitment, designed to present a flawless, accessible, yet ultimately untouchable image of the perfect celebrity. He stepped onto the stage with that impeccable, learned grace, offering Jimmy Fallon a warm, yet distinctly professional and fleeting, hug before settling with absolute composure onto the neutral gray guest couch. He was impeccably dressed, the very picture of the charming, eloquent, and perfectly managed global star. He radiated a light that was utterly contained, a human being who understood and meticulously respected the precise geometry and demands of public fame. The interview began smoothly, almost academically. Tom was sharp, funny, poetic, effortlessly in control. He navigated the initial pleasantries and anecdotes with the articulate precision of a man whose internal world is always meticulously ordered, a stark contrast to the chaos he often portrays on screen. He spoke at great length about his recent theater projects, a grueling run that demanded a terrifying, almost surgical commitment of time, memory, and soul. He detailed the extreme, creeping emotional toll of long-form acting, describing the necessity of ruthlessly suppressing one's own life, anxieties, and personal boundaries for months to fully and authentically embody another, often broken, often tragic, person. He touched upon the complexity of living between these powerful fictional identities, the constant, invisible mental toggling required to switch between Tom Hiddleston the brand and the character currently in residence, and the strange, deeply isolating psychology of global fame. A fame he managed with an almost superhuman disciplined grace that was itself an ongoing silent performance. But Jimmy had been watching him closely. The host, sensitive to the subtle cues of a performer's interior life, noticed the almost frightening degree of Tom's composure. It was a control that felt less like natural ease and more like absolute necessary vigilance. The continuous strained tension of a high-tension wire, pulled almost to its absolute breaking point, a tension that hinted at a deep, unsustainable fatigue beneath the surface. Jimmy waited, steering the conversation with a subtle, expert hand, allowing the current topics to act as a psychological funnel, until Tom's discussion of acting and the burden of identity reached its absolute peak, when the philosophical met the brutally personal, and the line between the persona and the man was thinnest, most vulnerable. And when the conversation reached the critical topic of identity, Jimmy gently asked, his voice softening into a quiet, focused whisper that instantly commanded and hushed the expectant audience. The subtle, dramatic drop in volume acted like a profound, audible punctuation mark, demanding instant, total, and irreversible attention. Tom, when the lights are off, the door is locked, and you are alone, truly alone, at home, in the dead of night, and there are no lines to learn. Do you ever stop performing? Do you know how to be simply Tom? It was an innocent question, or seemed like one, an honest, deeply human inquiry into the private, sacred sanctuary of a public figure, a simple question that carried the weight of 1,000 psychological treatises. But the effect was immediate and unmistakable. The shocking simplicity of the query served as a surgical scalpel, effortlessly cutting through the years of practiced celebrity defense. Tom's smile faltered, just a fraction of a second, almost invisible, a desperate, instantaneous twitch around the mouth that vanished almost instantly as he attempted to restore order, but it was there. It was enough for anyone paying attention, for Jimmy, for the director in the booth, to feel a massive, terrifying, palpable shift in the studio's atmosphere. The perfect composure had shattered. His eyes, seconds ago warm and engaged, became momentarily vacant, searching, and haunted. The studio grew instantly, frighteningly still. The residual crowd noise and the applause track were forgotten, replaced by a profound, expectant, fearful silence. Tom inhaled softly, the sound of his breath captured by the desk microphone, amplified into the silence, an almost painful sonic intrusion into the highly polished broadcast. He didn't immediately answer the question. He seemed to be listening to a different, inner dialogue, an overwhelming conflict he could no longer suppress or intellectualize. And then, without warning, began speaking in a rhythm that was not conversation and not acting. Something terrifyingly in between. It was an involuntary, desperate confession, a profound truth spilling out of a place deeper and more fragile than any stage role he had ever undertaken, a monologue, but not one he had rehearsed. His words were unstructured, raw, and hesitant, lacking the polished rhythm and dramatic flourish of his usual eloquent speaking voice. They felt desperately unearthed, painful, and forced, not one from any play or film. It was the language of a man caught in a waking nightmare, staring at his own reflection, and finding a stranger staring back. Something that seemed to come from a place deeper and more fragile than performance. His eyes were distant, unfocused, fixed on a point somewhere beyond the audience, beyond the camera, seemingly staring into his own internal void, searching desperately for a face that wasn't a character's, searching for a memory of a time before the mask. "Sometimes," he murmured, the word barely audible over the sudden, intense stillness, the effort of vocalizing the thought physically difficult. "I forget who I am when there isn't a script telling me. The roles become the instructions for being, Jimmy. They provide the necessary context, the emotional boundaries, the required objective, the functional utility for every movement, every expression, every genuine or fabricated emotion. When the script ends, the instructions stop. And when the instructions stop, there is only quiet. And in that quiet, I often find I don't recognize the man who is supposed to inhabit it. The character is always, always safer." Jimmy's entire body froze, his hands gripping the edges of his desk. He wasn't looking at an actor selling a movie now. He was looking at a man slipping into something raw and unguarded, a brilliant mind losing its emotional footing live on television. The terrifying realization of this unscripted, highly personal, and deeply human moment forced the host to discard his professional routine entirely. This was no longer a show. Tom continued, his voice trembling almost imperceptibly with the excruciating internal effort required to articulate this dark, defining reality. "I play men who break, men who rage, men who hurt. I understand their chaos, their destructive path, their ultimate purpose in the narrative. They feel logical. They feel like home because they are defined. But I don't know how to stop being useful when the curtain falls. If I'm not performing Loki, or the spy, or the tragic hero, or the romantic lead, what is my function? What is my utility to the world? I only know how to execute a purpose handed to me on the page. The vacuum is deafening, and the idleness, the lack of defined purpose, is terrifying." The studio audience stopped breathing. The silence was so complete it felt physical, like a dangerous pressure change in the air, a vacuum caused by the sudden draining of all entertainment expectation. People leaned forward, hands covering their mouths in shock and sudden, profound empathy, afraid to interrupt whatever was happening. A prolonged, shocking moment that wasn't entertainment anymore, but a raw, public document of a soul in genuine existential crisis. Jimmy whispered, his voice thick with unfeigned professional concern. "Tom, are you all right? Can we pause for a moment? We can cut to commercial." He was offering him the escape hatch, the emergency stop button. Tom didn't seem to hear him. The offer of kindness, the technical lifeline, failed to penetrate the wall of his sudden interior focus. His internal conflict was too consuming, too vast. His hands clasped together so tightly in his lap that the knuckles went entirely white, a desperate, futile, physical attempt to anchor himself to a reality he no longer trusted or understood. His breathing fluttered, shallow and quick, trapped beneath the perfect tailoring of his expensive suit jacket. He looked up finally. His eyes were bright, not with manufactured tears for the camera, but with a frightening, exposed honesty. The light in his eyes was the desperate, trapped light of a man facing his deepest, most existential fear, the one he had successfully repressed his entire adult life. "I don't know how to be off stage," he admitted, the words barely escaping his throat, sounding thin and small, utterly stripped of their theatrical resonance. "I don't know how to be irrelevant." The word, carrying the cumulative weight of a lifelong career built on relevance, purpose, and spectacle, hung there, heavy and devastating. Jimmy slowly stood, his movements slow and deliberate, instinctively approaching him with gentle concern, his host persona completely abandoned for the simple, profound role of a compassionate human being. This wasn't a bit. This wasn't promotion. This was a world-famous, beloved man, unraveling in real time, accidentally revealing the devastating psychological consequence of maintaining perfect control for 2 decades under the global spotlight. He sat beside Tom on the gray couch, physically closing the emotional and physical gap, lowering his voice to a tone of absolute intimate sincerity. "Tom, look at me. This isn't a performance. The audience isn't a crowd right now. This is you, just being you. And we're all still here. You don't need a script for this moment. A beat." A terrible extended silence that lasted for an eternity in the television world, forcing the producers to hold the shot despite all rules of pacing and commercial breaks. The emotional tension was unbearable. Tom exhaled, shaky, broken, the fragile human beneath the global star, finally speaking again, confirming the profound cost of his commitment. "I know. That's what scares me." The realization that this breakdown was genuine, utterly unscripted, and entirely his own, was the ultimate terror, the fear that the real Tom Hiddleston was fundamentally and tragically insufficient. The silence after those words was the most powerful sound of the entire night. The audience didn't cheer, didn't gasp, didn't move. They simply watched a world-class actor, a man known for his eloquence and perfect control, accidentally reveal the devastating, isolating truth behind that control. It was a silent, collective tribute to the magnitude of his internal struggle, a shared moment of recognition for the terrifying human struggle beneath the fame. Later, the clip would go massively viral, not because of spectacle, not because of shock, but because everyone recognized something painfully human, a man forgetting where the character ends and where he begins. This single unscripted moment redefined him, transforming him from an untouchable classical actor into a relatable, profoundly fragile artist. The fear of being irrelevant became the most tragic, most compelling line he ever delivered on any stage.